So just because someone is religious doesn't automatically mean that they're a good person. Now, of course, you already knew that, but the woman I'm talking about specifically is this woman, Melinda. And Melinda is 23 when this story starts, and she's living in Kansas. And Melinda works as a secretary at a local Christian university. And she's obviously very religious. But one day in 1981, she meets this guy, Mangelsdorf. And Mangelsdorf is the student body president. And so he and Melinda, they start talking and they hit it off, and over time, they become close friends. And eventually, Melinda starts thinking Mangelsdorf, he's kind of fine. And Mangelsdorf thinks Melinda is kind of fine. And so they start smashing. Here's the problem with all that, though. Melinda is actually married. She's married to this guy, David. And David, he's a nice man. He works at a local bank. And to complicate things even more, David is also friends with Mangelsdorf. They apparently play racquetball together quite often. But neither Mangelsdorf nor Melinda seem to care about all that. So they continue their secret affair together, and they keep spending more and more time together. And over the course of their affair, students and faculty around campus start noticing, and they start gossiping about it. Even members of their church community notice, and they try to intervene. Like they warn Melinda that she shouldn't be this close to Mangelsdorf, especially since she's married. But, of course, she doesn't listen to them. In fact, her feelings for Mangelsdorf have grown even stronger over time. Like now, Melinda feels like she wants to spend even more time with him. Like she's tired of sneaking around. She's tired of constantly making sure that no one catches them alone. And most importantly, she's tired of her husband, David, as she slowly starts falling out of love with him. All she wants is Mangelsdorf. Now, at this point, Melinda could do the right thing and, file for divorce or whatever. But remember, she's super religious. And divorce is strictly forbidden in her church. I mean, what would people say if she got a divorce? It would bring shame to her whole family. So after a while, Melinda comes to a terrible conclusion, that the only way she can ever be with Mangelsdorf is if David dies. And the only way David is gonna die is if she makes it happen. So she goes and she talks to Mangelsdorf about it, and together they come up with a plan. Now their plan is to have him sneak into Melinda and David's apartment at night, and then he'll murder David with a crowbar and make it look like a robbery gone wrong. So some time passes, and we're now in 1982, and the time has finally come for Melinda and Mangelsdorf to enact their plan. So that night, a little after midnight, David and Melinda are home, and David is asleep. And Melinda quietly gets up, and she opens the door to let Mangelsdorf into the apartment. And Mangelsdorf has got his crowbar, and he slowly walks into the bedroom where David is. And he goes up to him, and suddenly, pow, pow, he hits David over and over again. And unfortunately, David doesn't survive this. Now, to sell their bullshit robbery gone wrong story, they need Melinda to look like a victim too. So Mangelsdorf takes the crowbar and pow, he hits her in the face with it. So now she has a bruise on her face, and she can say that the robber attacked her too. Then Mangelsdorf leaves. About an hour later, Melinda runs to her neighbor's apartment screaming for help, pretending to be all panicked. And she tells them that they've been robbed and to call 911. And so soon the police arrive, and they question Melinda, and she lies to them and tells them this whole elaborate nonsense story that she and Mangelsdorf came up with, that she woke up in the middle of the night and two mysterious black men were inside her apartment and they were attacking David, and that they were demanding that he give them the keys to his workplace, the local bank. And that then one of the robbers started beating David so badly that the other robber even warned him that he might have gone too far. Like, hey man, take it easy. And then she says after they were done beating him, they demanded the bank keys, and Melinda decided to hand them over. And after that, she says that they hit her in the face, knocking her unconscious, and she woke up about an hour later, and that is when she ran out looking for help. And so police hear her story, and I guess they believe her. They even go as far as setting up a stakeout at the bank David works at, hoping that these two mysterious black men robbers will show up. But of course, the robbers don't show up because they don't f***ing exist. Anyway, then, during police's investigation, something unexpected happens. Police use canine unit dogs to track the scent of David's blood trail, and the dogs lead them all the way over to a random dumpster. A dumpster outside Mangelsdorf's apartment. But, unfortunately, this dumpster has already been emptied, so police don't know if there was any evidence in it. But now, the police start getting suspicious of Mangelsdorf. Because remember, he and David were friends, so they start thinking that maybe David's friend killed him. And so they go and search his apartment, and there they find bloodstains right on his door. But when they test the blood, the results don't show that it matches with David. Mostly because the technology available at that time just isn't very advanced. And so police start talking to people in the community and interviewing them, people who knew David. And some of these people start pointing out the rumors of David's wife Melinda smashing with David's friend Mangelsdorf. Yeah, the same guy police are already suspicious of. However, police can't prove any of this. They can't prove an affair. They can't prove that these two murdered anyone. And with little to no evidence, the case eventually goes cold. And now, interestingly enough, after the murder, Mangelsdorf and Melinda, they aren't feeling too good about all this. They both actually feel really guilty, as they should. In fact, they feel so guilty that after David's funeral, they break up and completely cut off contact with one another. So then, what was the point of all that murder they were doing? Anyway, then Melinda ends up moving away to Ohio while Mangelsdorf stays in Kansas and he continues with his studies and he eventually goes on to Harvard Business School. So, good for him, I guess? Anyway, so it looks like these two have completely gotten away with murder. Until 19 years go by, and it's now 2001. And around this time, the local police department in that county gains access to new, more advanced DNA matching technology. And they decide to run it on some old, unsolved cases, including David's murder. And so they go and they retest the bloodstains found on Mangelsdorf's apartment door. And this time, the results show an extremely high probability that the blood on the door belonged to David. And so the detectives working on this are like, all right, I guess we gotta go track everyone down now. And so they go to Ohio and they visit Melinda and they start asking her questions about what really happened the night David died. And Melinda, she cannot keep her story straight. She's getting details wrong. She claims there was only one black man who robbed them instead of the two. And now eventually, pretty quickly, she cracks and she admits that it was actually Mangelsdorf who was the intruder. And then, immediately, she starts trying to cut a deal with the detectives in exchange for her cooperation. And so now, these detectives know that something is very wrong. Because, guilty people don't usually try to cut a deal before charges are even filed. Anyway, and so, bam, they arrest her. Here's her mugshot. And then, they track down Mangelsdorf, and bam, they arrest him too. Here's his mugshot. And ultimately, Melinda takes a plea deal and she gets sentenced to a minimum of 10 years and a maximum of 20 years in prison, while Mangelsdorf takes a plea deal and he also gets sentenced to a minimum of 10 years, maximum of 20 years in prison.